Passion. It's what drove Malay Boauphakeo from her humble beginnings in Storm Lake, Iowa, to the softball diamond at Drake University.
Passion to me is living your life with your whole heart.
After graduating and entering the workforce, her passion for competitive sports would lead her to found and compete on a roller derby team, the Des Monies Dames.
And live a life where there's no fear and to take risks.
Malay's greatest passion in life just might be instilling it in others through her work as a life coach, IT recruiter, and with her newly earned master's degree in mental health counseling.
Yeah.
Really?
I don't have a cool background like you yet. I see my friend Linda on there though too.
Yeah.
Oh, you
Yeah,
know
Lynn.
Linda?
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
From Iowa, right?
Well, and she went to Drake the same time I did, and
Okay.
so we all hung out. You know how softball players and basketball players. So
Nice.
yeah, you should
You just,
update that with Indiana though.
oh yeah, that's true. This is old. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's right. We got to do that. They won the Big Ten championship and everything
Oh
with her
yeah.
there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. They did. And I was actually at the Iowa game versus Indiana where Caitlin Clark made that last 3-point shot with my
Oh,
daughter. It was nuts, but that was good. It was cool.
All right. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of C4 Podcast, Southeast Asian Athlete Achievement Through Adversity. My name is Coach Andetka. I'm here with my co-host, John Messina. If you haven't already, please like and share our Facebook page, Lao American Sports Hall of Fame and C4 Podcast. We're also on Instagram, Lao American Sports. If you follow our YouTube channel, please like, comment, and subscribe if you could. We have an amazing guest today, and I will let my co-host John introduce her.
yeah. We're very excited about today's interview. What we find interesting is, we got to start feeding our kids some of that Iowa corn because if you've been following this show, if you follow the Lao American Sports Hall of Fame, folks, we have one person coming out of Iowa after another. We just had a Navy SEAL, Tron Sipetsai, on. He's from Iowa. We had an interview with pilot Krista Atwood. She lives in Florida now, but originally from Iowa. Justin Pongsavon, the Paralympic medalist. Scott Fadavong, pro football player and Drake University alumni. Linda Sayavangchan, Big Ten basketball coach, Drake University alumni. Joseph Donarat, Drake soccer player. He's in the Hall of Fame. So a lot of Drake. And then even Jackie Siasone, the cornhole pro, not technically from Iowa, but basically she lives in Sioux City, just like on the edge that's in Nebraska. And today we have another both Iowa resident and Drake University alumni, Malay. She's going to be introducing herself in a minute. She comes to us out of Storm Lake. Just to set the stage for those of you who have never heard of Storm Lake, which I'm guessing is a lot of you, it's a small town kind of in the far western side of Iowa. It centers around a couple of food processing plants, a turkey plant, a hog plant, and most of the people there work in the agricultural or food processing industry. A lot of Lao people got their start in that industry, like my in-laws working in the slaughterhouses when they first came over, because you didn't have to speak English and the jobs paid pretty well. So places like Storm Lake have communities, believe it or not. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and welcome Malay to the show. Malay, why don't you tell us who you are and start at the beginning with your family's journey from Laos, what you know about that in your childhood.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to thank John, you and Co for, creating this thing and really putting the word out with, some of the Lao American athletes, and just kind of the great things that we're doing. But, my journey has has been an interesting one, obviously, first generation immigrant parents coming from Laos. How we really ended up in Iowa specifically is, my parents, you had to go to refugee camp before, to get sponsored to come over to the United States. And so my parents ended up in a refugee camp in Thailand with my brother, and then my sister was born there. And then when we came here to Iowa is because my dad's brother actually got sponsored in Des Moines. And then when we got to Des Moines, we got to Storm Lake from there. But I was actually born in Denison, Iowa. So I was actually born in the United States. Went to school, as you mentioned, Storm Lake. that's a huge, a huge town of immigrants. And honestly, that was that time in the 80s when Governor Ray opened up, the state and said, we will take some of these refugees from Southeast Asia. So you'll see a lot of Southeast Asian immigrants really coming into Iowa, or really in that in the Midwest West region. And that's really how we ended up here. Storm Lake, I would say, is a special place for me. And that's because, number one, the meatpacking plant. My parents didn't speak or write or read English. And it was IBP back then. Now it's Tyson. And they started there, where you don't have to necessarily be able to read and write. You have to just do manual labor. So they ended up there. My mom still works there, actually, so over 30 years working there.
Wow.
I graduated high school in 2001. I had a chance to go to Buena Vista University on a full ride scholarship, and I said to myself, I want to get out of the small town. I want to, go somewhere else and experience something else. And so that's how I landed at Drake University. And so I've been in Des Moines since when I graduated 2001. I've really made this my home. So that's a little bit about me.
Yeah. So just to put in perspective, if you're from Iowa, Storm Lake, Des Moines is considered going to the big city.
The big city. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty cool.
What year was it? What year was it, Malay, when your family came over from Laos?
1982, just the end of 82, because I was born in 83. Yep.
And your siblings, you said you have brothers, sisters. Are you the youngest?
I am the youngest. Yep.
Okay.
Both my brother and sister live in Omaha. So
Oh.
not too far from Iowa, but they live in Omaha.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Before we dive into your career as a softball player at Drake, you had quite a bit of adversity growing up. Would you mind sharing a little bit about that with us?
I mean, as I mentioned, the governor opened up this state for refugees to come and find a home here. Well, going to this small town Iowa, where it's rural America, we've got farmers everywhere, and you've got a bunch of people who are not Caucasian. And so, Storm Lake really had to rally around whether or not they're going to accept and welcome these refugees, or they weren't going to help them make it a home. And the community really rallied around that. The school systems really rallied around that. And some adversity there is I think sometimes the school system didn't quite, like, I got put into ESL when I started going to school, but I grew up with English around me, and most of the time they just didn't know whether or not we needed it, what kind of services we needed. But I think that the biggest thing is that they knew we needed it, so how can we get there? So there's a lot of trial and error. There was a lot of how can we support this community and embrace them in those ways? So there's always those challenges. And I guess the blessing in disguise is that there's a lot of refugees that did make it to Storm Lake. So I wasn't the only Asian American. I wasn't the only Lao person, which was helpful. But at the same time, we were also different. And I think that is something that I mean, we still look at color differently still in the United States, but there's a lot of almost somewhat proving yourself in a way, right? That you were going to be a contributing member to this community, to the society. And there's a little bit of continuing to raise the bar a little bit or prove yourself in some way. So I think that was something that we had to really learn to navigate kind of on our own too.
Yeah, I get when you say proving ourselves, right? Proving we belong here. Okay. And then I was a kid. I was born in Laos, but came here, and I was 4 when I came here. And I remember dealing with the racism and stuff. But even my parents reinforced it. This isn't our home. We don't belong here. That's what I was told by my parents. So I really had a hard time belonging.
Yeah.
So I totally get that.
Our culture in general is, the Asian population is seen as more of a model, kind of a model culture with being able to meld and mold in the United States. Why? Because we are taught in our culture is keep your head down, what cause little ruckus as possible
Right.
and do your job, and that's what our parents did when they came here is they tried to cause as little trouble as possible, keep their head down and just work hard and just be able to have a life. Because in Laos they had a life, but two different types of worlds, right? You got the United
Yep.
States versus Laos, totally different worlds. And so coming here, it's let's be able to survive here. So there's a lot of survival mentality with my parents going into this, and it's tr- standing out, whether have been in sports or I took a lot of leadership positions growing up too, just like in student council and like different clubs, but that wasn't always something that our culture embraced in that way necessarily. Like our parents, my parents, I mean, I don't know that they understood the value of what we were getting out of the things that we were participating. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, you
I mean, I
nailed it.
think
No, you
my
nailed it.
my I think
Survivor.
my mom quit school when she was like in third grade. Didn't want to go, hit up in a tree and said she didn't want to go, and her parents were like, okay, and they put her to work, and that's what it was.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. Like in their eyes, it was about survival. I guess in the later generations, but even like now, right? And you're seeing like we're focusing on the athletes, what me and John are doing, and we see the athletes like they're flourishing, right? I mean, now we're starting to make a name for ourselves where we just were in the beginning. Yeah, our parents were here just to survive, and it's kind of like what was for a while you're following their footsteps until you realize, okay, I want to be different. I don't like this anymore.
Right.
I
And
want to do something.
now we're trying to figure out how to thrive. Where do we belong in this world of maybe athletes or, in our careers or our profession? Like where exactly can we thrive, and who's going to allow us that ability to do that, right? Or not who, but who's going to give us that opportunity to do that? But as maybe we all know is that we have to create those opportunities
Yeah,
ourselves, and nothing gets
yeah,
handed to you necessarily. You gotta find those things, but it's like you're starting further back from the starting line.
Yeah, for sure. But you, I mean, it's very few people go on to be a Division I athlete. It's a fraction of, it's like 1% of all high school athletes. You did it, kind of as a, Lao American, one of the few that did it that early. Tell us about your softball career at Drake, how you got on the team, what you did there.
Yeah, I mean, so my love was always basketball, let's be honest. But I'm 4'11" and 3/4. I don't think I was going to make it as a Division I basketball
Yeah.
player, but that was always my love.
We had Linda
Um,
on, she's 5'9", so
I
yeah.
know she's 5'9", and the thing is that to stand out and to become a Division I athlete, you have to be seen, you have to be noticed, you have to be put out there. But that's not something my parents afforded me because they simply just didn't know either. And also I didn't know how to do it. So coming out of high school, I knew I wanted to continue to play. I love softball. When I was in eighth grade in high school, or just coming out of middle school, I got moved up to the freshman team, and then quickly after there I moved to the JV team, and then quickly after there I moved to the varsity team and started as an eighth grader on the varsity team. And I just kind of continued to excel in softball in particular. But also I didn't know how to get recruited either. I didn't know how to like contact coaches and get them to see what I can necessarily do. And my next best thing was I want to play, but I also want to get an education, and that's something that is important regardless of whether or not you play sports, but an education. And so when I went to Drake, I didn't get recruited. I didn't get anything. I walked onto the team and I showed what I could do. And, but, I was, pinch hitting, pinch running, playing outfield a couple of the games my freshman year, did a lot of pinch running as well. But then from there, that the coach that we had left, and then we got a new coach, Coach Calvert, and he came from the University of Iowa. He was an assistant coach for many, many, many years prior to that, and Iowa's a great softball program. He came on board, and you know, I I had to figure out if I wanted to play because I was fast. I had to learn how to slap from the left side. that is nothing that I did in high school at all. And, so why not do it as your sophomore year in college to, to really prove, your skill set and find that place on the team. And I did it. And so, after that, after my sophomore year, I got scholarship. So I was able to earn scholarship after a couple of years, which was great. It was not necessarily something that I needed to prove, but it also validated, I would say, my contributions in my skill set.
Yeah, that's good. So what would you say some of your biggest accomplishments on the team were?
Energy, I would say. There was it my junior year or senior year? I can't remember, but I had strep throat and we were playing Iowa State that day. And I couldn't go to the game because I, had strep throat and I just got diagnosed. So I was contagious. And I was super bummed because obviously I wanted to be there. I wanted to play, against Iowa State. And we ended up losing. And my coach said, if Malay was here, we would have won this game because there was a lack of energy. There was a lack of like passion. And I think that was for me, like my passion for the game and my love for my teammates and just competing, like that's infectious. And I'm not, trying to toot my own horn or, I'm not egotistical by any means, but I also know who I am and what I can bring to the table. And so if anything, that is probably what I brought to my team.
That's awesome. So you graduate from Drake. Tell us a little bit about what you did after that.
So I started off in public relations and I continued with public relations. I found out it was way too much writing and I didn't necessarily want to write a whole lot. So I got my concentration in human resource management. And I did an internship at UPS. I did recruiting, and that kind of led into where I have been at is talent acquisition, so HR, recruiting specifically. I knew I had a knack for people. I knew how to connect with people, easily. I wasn't afraid to talk to anyone or anything. So that is kind of like what naturally led into me in the recruiting world. And then I been in specifically IT. So currently I work for Principal Financial Group and I'm a senior sourcing consultant. So I specifically work on our IT, talent and, bring in talent for Principal. Going back a little bit though, with my journey, at one point it was, I was probably 10 years into my recruiting, my recruiting professional life. And I had started a roller derby team, which I know you're probably going to ask a little later. And I really understood like when I was recruiting, I wasn't asking people like, oh, what's your skill set? I was asking more than that. Like, what drives you? What motivates you? Because people aren't, you can go be a Java developer anywhere, right? And you can do that. But really, why do you want to be, why? Like what drives you? And maybe it's family, maybe it's like this passion, but like those are things that you have to ask, you have to ask the hard questions to get people, to a place where you can match them, on the level of, this company might have an interest in what you're bringing to the table, but you're asking more than that. So when I started my roller derby team, I was like, what am I going to do this my entire life? And I saw how much roller derby and just creating that changed people's lives. And I was like, can I swear on here? I was like, holy crap.
Yeah.
I was like, holy shit, why I could do more than this. I want to impact people on a larger scale. So that's what got me into, like, literally one day I called my wife and I was like, I Googled life coaching and I'm like, that's what I'm going to be. And I called my wife and I'm like, I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to become a life coach. And she's like, what do you have to do for that? And do you even know what it is? I'm like, not really, but I read about it on the internet and I'm pretty sure that's me. So then I started my journey to become a certified life and leadership coach. Life has changed a lot during that time. And, while I was still doing, life coaching, still doing IT recruiting as well. I found myself, I had my own business as a life coach, but financial obligations as well for family because we were growing it. We were, about to have our second kid. So I kind of, how am I going to structure my professional, and financial responsibilities in this way that becomes really a lot more sustainable. And that's why I went back to get my master's in mental health therapy and counseling. And I just completed that. So I will eventually move into that here in a little bit. But that's kind of my journey in the professional world, which is
Can
a
you give
lot.
us a
I'm sorry, I'm talking a lot.
Oh, no. We love it. Love it. Can you give us a timeline on when, let's say, you started roller derby, and when when you wanted to pursue life coaching?
Yeah.
Like, how
So
long that
it was probably around 2008. I literally saw so we have this newspaper, like a small publication, not like Des Moines Register, but it was called the City View. And I saw this like ad for this roller derby team who was having some ice cream social. And I'm like, that looks awesome. I wonder what that's about, you know? And I was a rink rat when I was a kid, literally. Like one of my best friends, her grandparents owned the skating rink in town. So I would go every Friday, Saturday night, and I would skate. And I missed playing like a competitive sport coming out of college. And slow pitch wasn't doing it for me. You know what I mean? Like I'm not interested in drinking a beer, you know, and playing softball. You know, that's just like not my thing. So I saw roller derby. I'm like, I'm going to check that out. So I did, and I'm like, this is it. And this is back in 2008. I think really 2000, the end of 2007, when roller derby like started to blow up. And then in 2008, I saw the team, and they still kind of beer drank, and I was like, I can't do that. I can't roll on roller skates and try to, you know, hit people with roller skates on. But that year in 2008, I had gone to RollerCon, which is this huge roller derby conference in Las Vegas. And you guys know Vegas. Vegas is big, right? But Vegas is like all about it. So I saw the Women's Flat Track Roller Derby Association had this conference. I'm like, I'm going to go to that because I'm like, there's got to be, this is a sport, right? Like, there's got to be more out there. So when I saw it, I saw people from around the world, around the US, around the world, come to Las Vegas, and it was all about roller derby. And I was like, holy shit, why is this not in Des Moines? I'm like, why are we not doing this in Des Moines? Because this is not just like this where you see it, you know, you saw it back in the day on a bank track, and it's a lot of theatrics, you know, and a lot of like WWE kind of style. And that was like, that was not what roller derby was that I saw. So I came back and I said, you know what, if you build it, they will come. If there's nothing here right now, you got to do it, because I don't want to miss out on something like this. So in 2009, I decided to capitalize on that opportunity to build something that was going to be a household name, that people were going to come, and it was going to be something that they went to on Friday nights. And I wanted to give back to the community as well. So that's kind of the timeline into roller derby for me.
So how was the recruiting process like for like you said you had to build a team, right? So
Mm-hmm.
how did you what did you go and how did you recruit?
So
What were you
what
looking for?
I was looking for people who want to be a part of something greater than themselves. And that
Mm-hmm,
was my mission. That was part of my mission statement, to
mm-hmm.
build a community and to be a part of something greater than ourselves. And so back then, I mean, I shouldn't say back then because people still Twitter, and I don't Twitter anymore necessarily, but Twitter was a thing back then. So I knew that if I wanted to make this a legitimate sport here in Des Moines, I needed skaters, but I needed volunteers, and I needed like people who could produce our bouts, right? Our games. In flat track roller derby, if you just had a large enough space, you can put down lines of what the track is going to be. And so I knew I needed those components. So what I did was I went on Twitter, right? And I used social media. I went back to that publication that, you know, talked about roller derby that I saw, you know, a couple years prior. And I promoted the crap out of the Des Moines Derby names. And my very first MC was his name is Jeremy Binghamton, but he was on Star 102. He's on Star 102.5. He's Luke Matthews. And I was like, I need him for our games. I need him to be able to tell the story of what's happening on the rink to people who have never seen roller derby before. So I recruited him. I recruited people who weren't interested, and literally I asked them to come and come to my basement. So I was like, we're going to have a meeting. It's going to be at my house. We're going to be in my basement, and I'm going to show you what roller derby is, and I want to get you excited about it. So that's literally how I started the Des Moines Derby Dames.
So
You
tell
mentioned, you
us.
mentioned, I'm
Oh, go
sorry,
ahead, Co.
sorry, John. Quick question, because you mentioned flat track. And could you explain that versus like what it's different than what roller derby was back in like the 70s and 80s, right? Because that was more on
That's a bank track. Yep. So think about bank track. You have to have a place that houses that, because you just can't build it every Friday night. You know,
right.
so in order to get leagues or teams up quicker, you needed just like a space. So we used our very first bout was at Malay Ballroom. So it was just a concert space. Became too small. We sold out our very first bout. We're like, we need to move, right? People are coming, we need to move. So then we went to a larger location where it was just concrete, right?
Oh,
And we just put down lines of the track.
oh wow, okay.
And and so you just needed that. So that's the difference between the bank track and the flat track.
Gotcha. All right,
Wow.
thank you for
So for those who don't know roller derby, just give the quick overview of what it is and how you win and compete.
So the best way I can say it's a mix of football, rugby, and so you've got four defenders, right? Everybody's playing defense at the same time, right? So then you have these things called jams, and they happen every 3 minutes, or they can get called out. You can stop the jam early if you get the lead jammer. So you've got these four on each team. You start out at the line, and then you've got two people who are our jammers, and these are the people that score points, and they're usually designated with a star on their cap, so you know who they are. And basically, these two jammers are trying to get through this scrum of people, right? And once they pass them, these are the points now they score of every defender that they pass. So then they'll go back around, they get through again, they'll score these many points. So you can go up to 3 minutes, or the person who gets out of that, the jammer who gets out of the basically scrum, the first can call off the jam. So you can see how strategy then comes into play. You can see, the football and rugby aspect of it all. You don't want the other team's jammer to get through, and you also want to help yours get through to score points. So at the end, whoever's got the most points.
And what's the time limit on like a contest? Like how long does it last? Is it periods? Is it one set time?
I don't know if they've changed it now, but it used to be 20-minute bouts or 20-minute halves.
Okay, cool.
Wow. So were there other teams around all of Iowa, or did you guys travel to play? Tell us a little bit about that.
We did travel. So you can become a league by starting it on your own, but then you can be a certified league by the Women's Flat Track Derby Association that governs then all of the ones that are certified. You have to you have to meet certain criteria in order to become a certified league. So there's teams that are out there that are close to you. So, who weren't flat track, who weren't certified. So there's an Iowa City team. There's a Cedar Falls or Cedar Rapids team. There's a Sioux City team. Omaha is obviously close. Some of those were actually certified leagues as well. But you can kind of see, you can go anywhere that had roller derby, but in order for you to qualify for nationals, once you become certified, you have to play other certified leagues. So we'd have to travel. There's just no other team in that close to not to travel.
Yeah. So did you become a certified team?
We did.
Right.
The funny part is that I didn't realize how much this would blow up. I knew it was exciting, right? Like Derby was super exciting. I just didn't know how quickly we would grow, and we grew really quickly. And we had we were fortunate enough to be kind of mentored by the Omaha team that had been around for a few years that was certified. And I said, well, maybe in year 2 we'll go after certification. Well, in year 1 we already needing to make a second team. And everybody's like, we've met this criteria. Why aren't we going for it? And I was like, well, fuck. Yeah, let's go for it, And we did, and that was super exciting for us because you needed to meet this criteria in order to be part of this greater league to make it to nationals XYZ. But yeah, so we were fortunate enough to be able to do that within 2 years.
Just curious, what was the name of your team?
My team, the Des
Yeah,
Moines Derby Dames, and then our second team was the Crash Test Dolls.
the Des Moines Derby Dames,
Des Moines Derby
and then
Dames.
what was the second one?
Crash Test Dolls.
The crash
And that's
test
Des
dolls, like
Moines.
the crash
Yeah,
test dummies. Yeah, like
yeah.
Oh, yeah,
a
Crash
play
Test.
on that.
Okay, and,
And
and that was Des Moines. That was Des Moines as well, right? Des Moines
right.
Crash Test.
What was
Okay.
really fun is that we actually had our fans vote and submit team names,
Oh,
and then it got voted on. So, I mean, honestly, the coolest thing I've done in my life was create the Des Moines Derby Dames and what we were able to do. Every bout, I made it a mission to give 10% of our proceeds of our bouts back to a charity. So our bouts were always tied to a charity. We had sponsors all over Des Moines, that helped us, with what we needed. But it was the coolest thing I've ever done.
yeah. It sounds like it, and I know COVID, threw a wrench in just about everything. But is this league still around? Is it still going?
So we merged with another league that formed after we formed, and there's still Derby around. It's not nearly the Derby that the Des Moines Derby Dames was, but the thing I think you need to keep in mind as well is like all volunteer run. So when I was
Yeah.
doing it, that was like a full-time job, and it's a league run by volunteers, and to keep that up was difficult to do.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. Well, no, that's extremely impressive, what you were able to accomplish there, and bring that team to life. So, kind of shifting gears here, another thing interesting, you come from a very non-traditional family, um, and I just curious what kind of adversity and challenges does that create for you guys?
Yeah. And when you mean non-traditional families, clarify that for me.
You're in a same-sex relationship, right, with your wife, and
Right.
you have children. Um, so we've come a long way as a society, but I'm sure there's still adversity out there surrounding
Oh,
that, correct?
100%. I'm a walking adversity poster child because I'm a woman, number one. I'm loud, number two, and I'm gay, number three. So all of those things are just working against me in society, period. And I think the biggest thing for me when it comes to adversity, I never look at it as adversity because for me, I don't see things as limits. I don't have limits because I feel like anything that I want to do, I could do it if I put my heart and my energy, in it. So I guess for me, that would be overcoming maybe a fear of someone's judgment, right? I mean, as the older that I get, the real less that I have with that, and that's something that I want to continue to teach our children too. Is that like I just I'm glad you asked that question. I literally just had a talk with my stepdaughter tonight about that, and it's like you got to show up who you are and be unapologetic for it. And for me, like growing up, I never wanted to be the fact that I was, that I was loud, get in my way. The fact that I was 4'11", getting away. It got in the way of basketball, but that is what it is. Can't change that. But never let those things get in your way. So adversity, I feel like can be overcome if you want to continue to work at it. And that's something that I will always continue to work at. I show up who I am. And if someone has something about it, that's not on me. You know what I mean? I'm gonna be who I am. So, will there be challenges or has there been challenges? I believe so, but I only make them part of my life and affect my life if I allow it to.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a great answer for sure. Um,
I love what you said. What you had mentioned, what you said to your stepdaughter about you don't have to apologize for anything. You know, because I myself growing up again with my parents and just always felt like what they had kind of passed down to me was again, going back to this is in our land, this is in our home, and if you make a mistake, you do got to apologize. You do got to say yes, sir, yes, ma'am, and all that stuff. So it's nice to hear you say, you don't have to apologize, right? I mean, I wish my parents would have said that to me as a kid. I think my life would have probably gone in a different direction.
Hmm. Well, I don't know about you, Co, but my parents didn't talk about feelings. That's just not
Oh,
what we've been.
correct. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
that's just not our culture,
Yeah.
and
Don't talk about it. Yeah. Don't talk
and
about
so
anything. Yeah.
so growing, emotional intelligence is self-work, right? That's something that, I realized I grew my own self-awareness of like being able to, you know, sometimes, hug people when I feel like I want to hug them,
Yeah.
or like tell them how I feel, because that is something in our culture that we just didn't get from our parents. We didn't learn
I remember as a kid, now I'm the youngest of seven, right? And I remember as a kid, I went to school and I was in grade school, and the teacher talked about, tell your family you love them and all that stuff, right? And I went home and I said to my brothers and sisters, like, I love you guys. And they just almost, I swear, like they looked at me like, what is wrong with you, kid? It's like, we don't talk about that stuff.
I would say that, and that is something that if I didn't have sports and had other influences in my life, like coaches or teachers or any sort of mentors that I have or have had, um, that's a behavior that I didn't necessarily learn at home.
Mm-hmm.
It's a behavior that I learned from other people by just being around them, having the ability to like play sports, right? And
Yeah.
then like have some acceptance, as a Lao American, that I am just who I am, and I happen to be good at sports. And then there's some privilege that comes with that, right? So I was privileged enough to have these opportunities to be surrounded by these people who can influence me on a greater level.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
Yeah, that's cool. So if you had one shot with Co and I, and to give us some life coaching advice, because God knows we could use it, right, Co?
Yeah.
What life coaching advice would you give us?
Oh, I mean, it'd probably be what I just said, be unapologetic and be you. As soon as you hide yourself, I mean, you're living unauthentically. And when you live an authentic and genuine life, being unapologetically you, nothing nothing's going to be able to bring you down from that, unless you give your power away to people. And once you give your power away to people to affect you in those ways, you've lost your own power, and you're the only one that can give it away. So don't do it. It's easier said than done, right? It's easier said than done because society and and pressure and life sometimes. But if you continue, you have to continue to work at it. You're always going to have change. Is the only thing that's constant in this world. So if you're constantly fighting this change and not knowing how to show up in this world, it's going to be a little bit harder for you, but there's always a way to figure that out.
Yeah. One of my mentors told me nobody can take anything away from you unless you give it away. So yeah, I like that.
Yeah, well, that's really cool. Well, Co, before we wrap up here, anything else from Malay?
Um, no, nothing I can think of off the top of my head that you didn't have any questions already.
Yeah, so Malay, where can people follow you?
You can probably follow me on Instagram. It's the Full Pursuit Coach. That is my Instagram handle. Like I said, I'm on Twitter as much anymore, unfortunately. But I would say follow me on that. I'm usually pretty active on that.
Yeah, there you go, everybody. Follow Malay, the Full Pursuit Coach. We'll post a link to her profile in the show notes for sure. But hey, great interview, Malay. We really appreciate coming on, telling your journey from refugee child to D1 athlete to founding that roller derby team. Quite an accomplishment for sure.
Thanks
So
for
with
having me,
that,
you guys.
yeah, no, we
Well,
appreciate you
yeah,
being on.
I guess, John, one last question. What's in the future? What's in the future for you, Malai?
The world is my oyster, man. Like something's
Yeah.
gonna come up that I'm gonna be
Yeah.
like, oh, I want a part of that. But right now I think my focus is on, I turned 40 in a couple weeks, so that's like a pivotal moment in life, I suppose. But
Happy birthday, if you don't get a chance to say that.
thank you. I just want to continue to make an impact on the world, and recently completing my master's in mental health therapy. I just passed my licensure exam, so I'm waiting for all of that to really go through. But just to continue to make an impact on people, whether that be my profession or whether that just be who I am, and give people that ability to see there's nothing to be afraid of if you be unapologetically you. So that's what's in my future, is just to continue to be me and capitalize on opportunities that I feel passionate about that can make an impact on people.
Awesome.
All right.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. It was a great interview. So definitely thank you. Thank you for coming on and being our guest.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you so much, guys.
The C4 podcast is brought to you by the Lao American Sports Hall of Fame. Visit us on the web at laoamericansports.com, celebrating the first, inspiring the next.